What would you do if you walked into a quiet shop expecting to buy a rifle and instead found a girl tied up, bleeding, and looking at you like you were the last hope she had left in the world? The morning sun had barely risen when Calder stepped onto the porch of Dobbs Outfitting and Supply. He needed a rifle, nothing more. The mountains behind him were calm, the kind of calm a man trusted. His boots were dusty, his jacket worn, and his mind was fixed on choosing a good Winchester and getting back to work before noon. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. Dust floated in the air like slow-moving snow, catching the soft morning light. Calder frowned. The place was too quiet. The bell above the door had rung like always, but no one answered. No footsteps, no cough, no old man voice complaining about the cold. The stove wasn't lit. The usual pipe smoke that hung in the corners of the shop was gone. Everything looked normal, yet something felt wrong. A half-finished account book sat open on the counter, with ink still wet. Behind the glass rifle stood neat and polished, tags hanging like little paper shadows. Calder called out for Dobbs. No answer. He wasn't a man who liked guessing games, and silence like this wasn't natural. He walked behind the counter and moved toward the narrow wooden door marked gear. Dobbs kept extra ropes, saddles, lanterns, and higher-priced guns behind it. The door wasn't locked. Calder pushed it open. The smell hit first. Metallic, sharp, wrong. He had smelled that scent before. It belonged to blood and fear. Then he saw her. A young woman lay on the floor beside a stack of bridles. Her hands were tied behind her back with braided rope so tight it cut her skin. Blood had dried in her dark hair, gluing strands to her cheek. Her dress was torn, dirt ground into the fabric. One of her eyes was swollen shut. The other watched him like she wasn't sure if he was real. Calder stepped inside, crouched low. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Her mouth was dry and cracked. She looked half conscious, half alive, but fighting. He checked her bindings. Rope burns. Bruises. Her ribs shifted wrong when she breathed. She'd been hurt bad, but she was still breathing. That alone was a miracle. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Who did this to you?" She winced, but didn't look away. "Where's Dobbs?" he asked. Her jaw twitched. She tried to speak, but only a faint breath escaped. With a slow, painful twist, she lifted her chin toward the far wall. Calder followed her look. A pile of horse blankets lay draped over something shaped wrong. He pulled the blankets away. Dobbs lay face down. Blood pooled beneath him. A gunshot wound marked the side of his head, the kind that didn't give a man a chance to scream. Calder stared for a long moment. Then he turned back to her. She wasn't a woman, not really. Maybe 19, maybe younger if someone cleaned the dirt and dried blood from her face. Her lips moved again. This time a single word slipped out, weak but clear. "Help." That was enough. Calder didn't waste another second. He cut the ropes from her wrists, lifted her into his arms, and carried her outside. She cried out in pain, her ribs shifting. He tried to hold her steady, tried to be gentle, but she was hurt everywhere. He laid her in the back of his buckboard and covered her with canvas. Her breathing slowed, her eyes fluttered. They were a mile out of town before she passed out completely. He kept riding, hard. There was a doctor in Send Springs 4 miles east. If the mule held, she might live. Calder didn't look back at the shop. He already knew what waited there. Blood. Silence. A nightmare that started long before he stepped through the door. Dr. Halford took the girl in without question. He was sharp-eyed, all bones and suspicion, but he worked fast. Calder waited outside, pacing across the dirt, scanning the road like danger might ride up any moment. When Halford finally came out, his face was tight. "She'll live," he said, "but she's been beaten, starved, wrists fractured, ribs cracked. Someone tied her up for days. There's a brand on her thigh, a double M. Someone marked her like livestock." Calder's jaw locked. The double M. He knew that brand. Everyone in the territory did. The McCra brothers, Malden and Mitch. Men who ran the range south of Brush Hollow. Men known for cattle rustling, bribery, and things people whispered but never proved. There were stories about girls who went missing. about men who crossed the brothers and were never seen again. "What about Dobbs?" Halford asked. "He's dead," Calder said. Halford spit into the dirt. "Then that girl's lucky to be breathing." But Calder couldn't stop thinking about her eye. The one good eye that looked at him not with fear or gratitude, but something else. Recognition. She didn't speak for days. Halford kept her under morphine for the pain. Calder visited every morning. He didn't push. He just sat near her bed and brought water or apples or whatever she could stomach. On the fourth day, she finally whispered a word. "Juniper." He looked up. "Your name?" She nodded once. "You want to tell me what happened?" Her eyes drifted to the wall. "No." Calder didn't press her. "All right." But that night he rode into the hills above the McCra range. He watched their bunkhouse lights, the shadows of riders moving across the dirt. Something evil lived down there. Something that hurt girls and killed men who tried to help. He wasn't the only one awake. Juniper lay in the doctor's dark side room. She hadn't slept either. She heard every step of Calder's boots when he returned. She remembered that sound. It was the last thing she heard before someone dragged her into Dobbs's gear closet. She didn't sleep the rest of the night. She remembered voices, hands, a brand, and a rancher who once crossed paths with her long before this. Juniper wasn't done, and neither was Calder. Juniper healed slowly, each day pulling her a little further away from death, and a little closer to the truth she refused to say out loud. On the sixth morning, she asked Calder to help her stand outside. Her legs shook under her, but she forced herself into the sunlight. She stared at the sky with a hard, steady look, like she wasn't sure if she belonged under it anymore. Calder didn't ask questions. He just waited. The town of Sand Springs moved around them like nothing had changed. Wagons rattled by, boys shouted near the smithy, women bartered at the stalls. No one stared at Juniper's bruised face. Sand Springs had seen hurt women before. It had learned to look away. Calder walked her to the boarding house near the livery. The woman who owned it didn't talk, which suited Juniper just fine. Calder paid a month's rent up front. Juniper watched him closely. "You got a name?" she asked him on the porch. He paused, thumb brushing the brim of his hat. "Calder," he said. "Tomas Calder." She repeated the name under her breath, like she'd heard it before but couldn't place it. "All right," she said. "Thank you." He tipped his hat and walked away. Juniper watched him go, her eyes steady, sharp, measuring. She didn't trust him yet, but she didn't distrust him either. There was something in him she recognized from another life. A life before the gear closet. A life before the McCra brothers marked her like an animal. At night, she counted the coins hidden in her dress hem, $11 and a handful of change. Her brother had sewn the pocket himself, laughing as he stitched. They'd run small scams back then, card tricks and harmless hustles. Nothing violent. Nothing like this. She thought of him often. She thought of the day they crossed into McCra territory by mistake. She thought of what they did to him. Her hands shook as she wrote the first name in a small notebook. Dobbs. He died trying to help her. The second name she wrote was Malden McCra, the man who gave the orders. The man she hated most. Juniper forced herself to walk by the 8th day. Her ribs burned, but she made it to the saloon. She didn't drink. She just listened from a shadowed corner. Men talked loud when they thought no one important was listening. She heard about cattle drives, about a new marshal, about a boy thrown from a horse. And she heard about Calder. "He's poking around the old claim roads," one man muttered, "looking for something." "Not gold," another said. "Maybe ghosts." Juniper didn't smile. She just stood up and left. She walked to Calder's shack on the ridge, where aspens bent in the wind like old women whispering secrets. He opened the door like he'd been expecting her. "You want something?" he asked. "I want names." He stepped aside. The room was small but clean. A rifle hung above the hearth. Everything inside was careful, quiet, like Calder lived alone and carried a weight he didn't talk about. He poured her coffee without being asked. She accepted it. "They took my brother," she said, "1.5 years ago. strung him up like a scarecrow, said he was stealing. He wasn't. We were running a crooked card game. Didn't know whose land it was. McCra's, Calder said. She nodded. They came for me next, she said. Would have finished it if Dobbs hadn't stepped in. Calder leaned back, jaw hard. Why did you go back to their land that night? I wanted to see Malden's house, she said, so I'd know where to put the fire when I came back. He let out a slow breath. I went there once too, he said. Juniper looked up. They killed my wife. His voice didn't shake. It didn't crack. It was cold, steady, like the truth had been buried in him for years. She taught school in Eda Hollow. She saw something she shouldn't have. Next morning, I found her in the well. Juniper swallowed hard. I'm sorry. I'm not, Calder said. She'd want fire, not pity. He walked to the hearth and pulled a ledger out from under a floorboard. Names filled the pages. Notes. Tally marks. A quiet history of every ugly thing the McCra brothers had done. They used 3 men, Calder said, flipping pages. Malden gives the orders. Mitch does the dirty work. The third one goes by Cobb. A shiver ran through Juniper. She remembered his voice, the one who held her down, the one who whispered threats into her ear. That's him, she said. They didn't say anything for a moment. The air seemed to hum with something old and heavy. Finally, Juniper asked, What's your plan? Calder looked at her with the eyes of a man who had stopped planning to live long ago. I was waiting for the right time, he said. Juniper nodded once. Well, she said, I'm ready now. Quote, the sun was sinking when they rode out the next morning. Juniper on the bay gelding Calder had gentled himself. Calder with his rifle across his back. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The McCra spread lay across the valley below them. 3 bunkhouses. 40 men. A stone house Malden lived in like he was a king. But Juniper wasn't looking at the house. She watched the shadows, the fences, the back sheds, the places men hid the darkest parts of themselves. They waited in the cottonwoods. When the sun climbed high, Juniper saw him. Mitch McCra, branding iron in one hand, laughing. She didn't flinch. Not today, Calder whispered. I know, she answered, though her fingers tightened on the rifle. Then she saw the second man, moving slow, injured, with a stitched cheek and a sawed-off shotgun under his coat. Cobb, her breath caught, her skin chilled. I know his walk, she whispered. I remember every sound. We don't strike yet, Calder said. We gather proof. And we find others who have something to settle. They rode back at dusk. By the end of the week, they weren't alone anymore. Jonas Pike arrived first. Scarred jaw, blacksmith arms. A man with his own wounds from Mitch McCra. Then Cassie Harlan, widow, shotgun across her back. Then 2 bits, knife thrower, liar, dangerous, loyal to the right people. Juniper watched each one enter the abandoned barn where they gathered. She said little, but when she spoke, every head turned. This wasn't just Calder's fight anymore. It was hers. Tomorrow, Calder said, spreading out maps, we start. Juniper nodded once, steady, cold, ready. Then tomorrow we end this, she said. Night fell over the ridge like a heavy curtain, as Juniper, Calder, Jonas, Cassie, and 2 bits prepared for what came next. It was no longer about one girl tied in a gear closet. It was no longer about one dead rancher, one lost brother, or one murdered wife. It was about every name written in Calder's ledger, every life stolen. Every bruise, scar, and grave the McCra brothers had left behind. They had one goal left: cut the head off the serpent. The McCra freight line left Brush Hollow every week, hauling crates marked as cattle feed and mining tools. But hidden beneath those crates was the truth. Opium, stolen payroll, and girls. Girls taken from towns that never got answers, only grief. Juniper didn't sleep the night before. She lay awake in the dark cabin, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of her brother's voice, her own breath in that gear closet, the hands that held her down. She wasn't that girl anymore. She wasn't prey. She was the storm coming. Just before dawn, they moved out. Calder led the way along a narrow trail that clung to the canyon wall. Jonas, heavy with explosives, rode behind him. Cassie carried jars of black powder wrapped in flour sacks. 2 Bits vanished ahead, scouting shadows like a fox on 2 legs. Juniper rode last, her brother's knife tucked in her boot, her borrowed Henry rifle across her back. She didn't shake anymore. She didn't hesitate. They reached the canyon long before the train did. The walls rose high on both sides, trapping sound, trapping danger. It was the perfect place to stop a giant. Jonas packed dynamite near a culvert. Cassie helped cover it with rocks and dirt. Calder checked his rifle twice. The sun crept higher. Finally, the whistle echoed through the valley. Juniper stepped onto the tracks, holding a kerosene lantern. It was suicide if the train didn't stop. It was justice if it did. The engineer saw her, screamed. The brakes screeched so loud the canyon shook. The train slid, sparks flying under its iron wheels, until it groaned to a stop only a few feet from her. She didn't flinch. She climbed the side ladder, boots hitting the metal rungs in sharp beats. She ripped open the door to the 3rd boxcar. What she saw froze her breath. Cages, chains, rag-wrapped girls staring with empty eyes. The youngest looked no older than 10. Juniper whispered, "You're safe now," even though safety was still miles away. Behind her, chaos erupted. Jonas fired warning shots. Calder held off the guards. Cassie tended to the older girls. 2 Bits slit locks with quick hands. They burned the hidden crates. Every rotten thing the McCras shipped turned to smoke. The canyon filled with black clouds, the kind that drifted over a broken world. When it was done, when the last girl was free, Juniper swung onto her horse and rode away from the canyon alone. She had one last name to cross out: Malden McCra. She rode hard, wind screaming past her ears. She reached a McCra ranch by dusk. Guards were doubled, lanterns glowing like angry stars, guns glinting. But Juniper didn't come by the fence. She crawled through the storm drain she had memorized from her time in captivity. She moved silent as smoke, slipping under the stable and out again like she belonged to the shadows. Malden sat in his study, ledger open, a drink in his hand, unaware the world was shifting. Juniper stepped in. "Look at me!" Malden turned, his face drained of color. "You," he whispered. "You should have killed me," she said. She shot him in the knee. He screamed, grabbing the desk, blood spilling across the fine carpet. "You branded my brother," she said. "You let Mitch gut him. You held me down. You thought no one would come for me." He crawled, dragging his leg. "You're nothing," he rasped. "No," Juniper said. "I'm the end of you." She fired again. The shot tore through his throat. Malden's body dropped, his blood soaking the ledger that held every secret he ever used to buy silence. Juniper carved one word into the wall with her brother's knife. Juniper. No one would forget it. She slipped out before the fire spread. Behind her, flames climbed the walls of the house like justice rising from the dirt. By the time Mitch McCra returned to Sand Springs 3 days later, drunk and furious, the territory already knew the truth. He stormed into the saloon, Cobb limping beside him, half his face burned away. Mitch shouted for blood. For the girl he called a curse, for revenge. Juniper stepped into the saloon. She wore her brother's coat. She carried no mask. Her boots echoed across the floor. Mitch turned, his smile twisted. "Well," he said, "look who crawled out." "You remember the closet?" Juniper asked. Mitch grabbed his gun. Juniper was faster. One shot, straight into his gut. Mitch fell, howling, the blood pouring hot and fast. He reached for her boot. She kicked his hand away. Cobb rushed her next, slower than he once was. Breathing through ruined lungs, Juniper grabbed his knife from his own grip. "You held me down," she said. Cobb didn't answer. He couldn't. She drove the blade into his ribs. Slow, steady, exact. You die slow, she whispered, because you made others die slower. Cobb crumpled beside Mitch. Juniper stepped out of the saloon as calmly as she had stepped in. The town didn't stop her. It parted for her. Justice wasn't pretty that day. But it was true. Word spread fast. Malden dead. Mitch dead. Cobb dead. The McCra empire burned to ash, their ledgers in the hands of county judges who could no longer pretend they didn't know. Cassie rebuilt her bakery. Jonas opened a smithy. 2 bits vanished again, leaving only whispers. Calder left his shack and took up a stretch of land near Juniper's cabin. He didn't come to her often, and she didn't go to him. But sometimes, at dusk, they stood together on the ridge in quiet understanding. They didn't talk about the past. Some wounds didn't need words. Juniper planted a wild plum tree at the ridge's edge. Its roots fought the hard soil and survived. Every spring, small white flowers bloomed across it. Soft, defiant, alive. Just like her.